can really kind of make an impact. And I think that's the main driver behind most technicians. You want to change, you want to make the world a better place.
All right, everyone. Hi, and welcome to Dumbing Down Data. I'm your host, Carol, and here we're talking to people in tech about how they broke into the industry and all their best kept secrets on how to navigate it. And today we have Cornelia Kawann here from Switzerland, right?
Yes.
Amazing. Hi. So Cornelia is an engineer and she works in the energy space. And so I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things that we're going to get out of what Cornelia has to say. She has a wealth of knowledge. She's also working and running her own outside business on energy. So much wealth of knowledge there. And I'm so excited to have her here. I'm so glad we connected, Cornelia. And from here, I'm just going to start off by always asking, as I usually do, what do you do and how did you get started?
Thank you so much, Carol, for having me over. It's really a pleasure to be here and to speak to your audience. And I can only congratulate your audience that they are following such a cool host and bringing so much spirit and lightness into the tech industry, because normally it's always seen as something heavy and you have to deal with it, but actually nobody wants to, right?
Totally. So true. I'm glad you called that out. That's definitely a big part of what I'm trying to bring to the podcast or the industry is a little love and joy, it's there too.
Yes. And then I've experienced this attitude and thinking of so many people through whole my career. So that's really I know. And I think it's so valuable what you're doing.
Thank you.
Let's get started. And before I tell what I'm doing, I think it's much more fun and interesting to know how I got into the energy industry, because I think then it's easier to understand what I'm doing.
Perfect.
And the whole thing got started actually when I was quite little, and I was about 4 years old. And then I was playing. I really see the scene for me. I was playing in the garden and was like digging in the garden, and then I found a really big long nail. And then I got the really cool idea. What I always wanted to know is, what is in this socket? Because I was always fascinated that you plug in like some mixer or vacuum cleaner, and then the whole thing just works. And it was amazing. I thought, what's in this socket? And so I took the nail and I went into my room, and then I did something, I don't want any child doing it, but then I just put the nail into the socket.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And then the next thing I remembered that I was kind of lying in the middle of my room, and then my mother was kind of bending over me completely. Wow, what's going on? She was completely worried. And so luckily, and that's really in favor of tech, the security was faster than the current. So I kind of got only a light, push from the electricity, and I was kind of thrown backwards. And so I was not really hurt. And I know now that I was really lucky. But at that time, I was not kind of anxious or anything. I felt, wow, this thing is so powerful. I really want to know how it gets into the socket. And that's what I did. That's what I did. Why I decided I want to be an electrical engineer. I want to know how energy is produced, how it is transformed, transported, and then how it can be so powerful to kind of rule our daily life, right? Because without energy or electricity, nothing works. So this was kind of the story how I got started. And now after my studies in electrical engineering, and I enjoyed it so much that I even did a PhD. Now I can tell you, I know how the current gets into the socket. And and I've been, working at different companies all over Europe. I also had a research grant at Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory in Berkeley, not in San Francisco. There, where I was working for my PhD for 1 year. And so I think it's so important to really know how energy is produced and how we can use it. Last 80 years, it looks the same. It hasn't changed, the technology. But what has changed is, and that started in 1996 when I started with my PhD, is that the energy market was liberalized. And there was a shift also how people perceived energy. They realized there is no life in Western world without energy. Mm-hmm. It's so important. And in the position I'm right now is I can really kind of make an impact. And I think that's the main driver behind most technicians. You want to change, you want to make the world a better place. And yeah, that's the driver behind me.
I love that. I think that's something that I've heard a few times, is that there's this purpose behind what you're doing. And sometimes I try to remind listeners that it's not always about the technical aspects and like the learning all the specifics and everything, but it's the drivers, just like you said, the drivers or the passion behind what you're doing, and everything else will fall into place. And so I was curious, what would you say are some of the most important skills that you've attained, let's say starting from your initial career?
Yes, from the skills, I think is the most important, I think, is curiosity.
Mm-hmm. We get that a lot.
You need to be, you really need to be curious, to improve things, make it better, and and always find something new. I think that's probably the first thing. And I think that's there were always curious people behind new technologies, because they found something, because they were sometimes they were even looking for something completely different. And then, like text messages, they have been developed at CERN, when they were like working looking for the Higgs particle, and it was kind of just popped up and it appeared, and then they used it for internal communication, and then all of a sudden they figured out, wow, how powerful it is, and it would be so handy for use other people. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes you're looking for something but finding something completely different. But it's this curiosity to keep going, and then even then see the chance. Oh wow, I found this. I will even and they know what I'm going to do with it now, and then really kind of setting in a new context and this I can use for this, and this serves in this area. So that's I think how things just develop. And what I also think is we spoke at the beginning that there is a little bit resistance to get into new technologies. And I think this resistance is also very high with women. And now I feel, because like when I started working in the energy industry, there were kind of only few. And now it's more, there are more and more, because there is room also for economists and lawyers, and that's really the fun part about the energy world, is it's not only about technology anymore. It's about, you need to include also the legal part and also the economical part to make it flow and fly. And so you need so many different perspectives and skills. And I think especially now with the renewables being renewable energies in place, I think this is something that is more tangible for women, because it has this sustainable effect. And we're all looking, or especially when you're a woman, you always want to have like your kids having also a better place than you entered the world. So you want to have the sustainable energy generation. And that's now where I see that the more and more women are coming into the energy industry, which I think is amazing.
I love that. I think it's very important for people. One of the main reasons that I made this podcast was because my background is not in technology at all. I was an international affair major, and I fell into technology out of, I mean, I don't know if it's luck, but it was really because of my people skills. And now I train on technology, and I know technology very well, but it was all from just building off of it from my career. And what I think is important for people here listening is to let them know that you don't need a whole technical background. You don't need to know all of these specific skills in order to be in the industry or any other industry. Because while I might be, let's say, working at a startup right now that is tech space specific, we've also had people come in and talk to us from, let's say, the educational space, or you from the energy space. And technology really can be interwoven in so many ways, whether it's working as an engineer in the energy space, or someone was a data analyst in the educational space, or maybe someone like me who's working in a role that isn't specifically technical, but it's in the technical space. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it's like you just said, perspective is so important in this type of work, where it doesn't matter who you are, you might be able to bring something really good to the right industry. And kind of what you said too, with the passion, going back to curiosity, it's what are you most interested in? Because for you, for example, Cornelia, it was energy, and now you're interweaving technology with energy. For someone else, it might be a completely other industry, and they might be working in technology there. Or like me, they might be interested in something that's not a technical role, but in the technology industry. So I'm really glad that you mentioned it. And it's why another reason I love that you're here is it's so important to have women represent these types of spaces and be able to explain where you came from and what that was like. And maybe I will even love to ask you, what is it like being a woman in this space?
Wow, that's a very good question. You know, like when I started working, it was more, everybody thought I'm the assistant of a CEO or somewhere.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I could see that. Oh my gosh. We've changed a lot.
Then, yeah, or even when I was at a lot of conferences, because I did so much research and at my PhD, and then like people were, then I was standing like at the coffee place, and then like a guy would come by, I would like to have a black coffee.
Oh my gosh.
All these stories, they are true. They're
Wow.
really, they were true. Luckily, they aren't. But I would like to share with you one thing that really kind of emphasized that this is the right path I want to go down. And this was actually the first day at my electrical engineering class. And because I grew up, or my parents, I'm stemming from entrepreneur family. So my parents had their own business, and they always encouraged me, if you feel like doing it, just go for it. You can do everything, That was kind of the mindset. I was very supportive. And then I remember then when I was like standing outside the auditorium, and I had my hand on the handle, and then I pulled it open. And then I looked into it, and then I saw like these 800 guys staring at me. Yes. And wow.
I've heard this story before.
Let's shut the door and get out of here. And then I kind of sneaked in, and then I was sitting there. And then like the professor showed up, and this were kind of, electrical engineering was for a very long time seen as a last resort of man, right? And they really kind of were very protective against it. And then he had this white labor coat on to, in a way, show how important he is. Yeah, like this God in white. And then he scanned the room, and then he said, I see there are 3 women sitting in here. And then he really pointed at us and said, you know what? You better go home and learn cooking because you're not going to finish this study anyway.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And then I really thought, are you kidding me? Are you, do we really need to listen to such nonsense?
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. And that was kind of really, I'm going to show you. And that's really, that's why I really walked through my studies. It was really maybe this final push I needed. But I have to tell my colleagues, they were really amazing. They supported me at the beginning so much. And then we were kind of equal terms, and it was really fun. And I'm still in contact with most of them because, it was really a very special time.
Wow. I mean, you have to have a lot of grit, clearly, and a great attitude. I mean, I could tell, just from having met you the few times that we have, that you do have like a very great energy around you. And I think it does take a lot for when you're told you can't, or even when you tell yourself you can't. I think we're our biggest critic. So it's amazing that you're able to push through that. I'm going through that even now, when I'm creating this podcast and everything, and you can't, I mean, I've been told multiple times, podcasts don't get, big, and good luck ever making it and things like that. And it does take a lot of self-confidence, a lot of strength to get through it, especially when you're in the middle of 800 other men and them telling you that you can't. So that's really interesting. And it was just a question that sparked my attention because I think that's another thing that I notice here, at least in my industry or in technology specifically, it's very male centric. And I wonder if women have a hard time feeling comfortable being in the space. I'm not sure if it requires a certain type of personality to do it, but I do still think that the same things apply, that you can be anybody and you will have a very good perspective on it. Your initial study was in electrical engineering. And then what happened from there?
My first job is, I always wanted to make, I'm coming from as I already said, like from an entrepreneur family. So my main driver was always like, I want to build something up, create some things, found a company or whatever. But of course I was, you can't, or at least at that time I was thinking I can't build, create my own power company. But I was always curious, and then I learned about that Austria wanted to have its own energy exchange. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but so it's similar to a financial exchange, but you're trading energy, so like electricity and gas.
Interesting.
And that was part of you also have that in the US. So I learned that there was this project, and then I found out who is the person in charge for it, and then just sent a letter, and I said, I've learned you want to set up this energy exchange. I want to do it, and then they just hired me, and it was my first job, and from there, then because of course it got national attention if you build something up for the country. And then I got a second job. So it was always kind of building up new companies with kind of macroeconomic aspect in a way for serving the country. That was kind of my main driver. That's what I really loved about it.
Very cool. You kind of took matters in your own hands and you're like, this is where I want to be. Let me email this person or send a letter to this person and let them know that I want to be working for them. And then they let you in, and then you built what you needed to build for them. And that's how it kind of took you off into your career, which also kind of goes back to your curiosity, because that's, I guess, really what's been leading you into every single path that you were on.
Yes. And I think that's kind of the main message also, what kind of accompanied my whole life is seeing opportunities or creating my own opportunities. Because even though now, like from my last job, I'm working for the Swiss regulator, but now I'm kind of a board member, but I wasn't when I started. And then I kind of saw that there is a new law in the European Union was prepared, and I kind of studied it. And then I just went to my boss and said, this has an impact on Swiss market participants. We need to do something. And so we really had to set up the whole thing also to implement it in Switzerland. And then I, in a way, a new section was set up, and I got promoted to lead this section. So in a way, yeah, you can, in a way, always, if you see opportunities, then you can kind of even create your own your new job.
I keep thinking about the listener that might be just starting, and it's like very applicable to that. Finding something that you're interested in, finding one thing within technology that you're interested in, and then building from there, creating your own opportunities. That's very much, I think, applicable to anybody in any industry, but definitely for me, even where I built my own roles in my own companies, or in the companies that I'm in. I built my own trajectories. You're really in charge of your own life and where it goes. And if you want to break into the tech industry or any industry within the technology space, you can do it if you are persistent enough, curious enough, kind of like you said, and kind of build it from there. So I thought I'm really glad that you said that. And it's so powerful, because I think so many people think that it is handed to you, or you need to kind of maybe take a couple classes and that's how it happens. It's like, no, you really have to be the one to define what it is that you want to do and how you want to break in. And then it's just a little bit of effort, sometimes a little bit of luck, and then that's how you start building up on. And then it's a snowball, right? Because then, like you said, then you do something and then it leads you to the next thing, it leads you to the next thing, and it's a lot of that. So, and it's a very entrepreneur mindset to think about in that way too. So that's kind of cool. What are some roadblocks that you might find if you're playing with technology, if you're dabbling into the space, if you're trying to break into the space?
Technology, today everybody probably thinks about IT projects. And even if you have a very well outlined IT project and you have the budget and resources and everything, definitely like half of the things will go wrong. And yeah, and I think that's not bad about it, because if you really have a cool team, like with people with a technical mindset, as an engineer, there's always more than one solution to a problem, so you just need to find it. So there will be always a solution to to any problem, but sometimes it just takes more time to find it. And then you have all this pressure from the investors. You're running out of money, running out of time. And I think that's the biggest challenge. It's not about finishing any project, because there's always a solution and you can settle it. But it's more to meet it in time, and you just can't take into account everything in advance. It's just not possible. And and I think that's just part of technology. It's you need to, the deeper, the more you work into it, the deeper you dive, the more you understand, and the better you can handle and react to it. And even like Edison, he already said, I haven't failed 1,000 times. I only found, 99 ways how it doesn't work. And and it's so true. He really stayed on, and he managed. And sometimes it goes fast and sometimes it takes more time, but there's always a solution.
It's almost like there's no wrong path. How would you handle in those circumstances if somebody is going through those pressures, going through those things that aren't working? How did you navigate, or how do you navigate pushing through that moment and getting to the solution? What are some of your best kept secrets on that?
I think the best kept secret is diversity. The more diverse, smart people you have sitting on the table, the faster you find a better solution. That's what there's, the mathematical optimum is always, if you have more parameters that can be included, you always get a better mathematical optimum. It's just in a way how math works, and it's the same in real life. And I think it's so important to have diverse. If you really have a huge project, then have as many different people, different religions, gender, background, whatever at the table. And it will take some time until these people work together, but the result will be very much better.
Very cool. I wasn't expecting that answer. That's a good one. Um, Another question I have for you is for people just starting. They just are looking to break into tech or break into a role in technology and they don't know where to start. Obviously, you started from, you have the education background and everything. You obviously have the curiosity, which I think is also very important. But how would you suggest people who maybe are very curious, just starting off, what do they do to get involved in tech?
I think now is the best moment, actually. And, now with artificial intelligence being all over the place, like with ChatGPT and artificial paintings, and, it's all over the place. And then there is, you're quite sure you've heard it, Web3, metaverse, NFTs, we all have heard these terms. Yeah. And this is kind of the direction we are heading to right now. And I think the earlier you hop on this train, the better it's for you. And it's the same with the internet. I still know some people, they kind of proudly saying, I never ever used the internet. And of course there are a few of them. And it's okay, yes. Maybe you're using your time more valuably in different things, but you're also missing out on a lot of opportunities. And for me, it's the same. You make the choice. Do I want to be part of it, or do you want to jump on it when it's already quite late? And it's always the time you don't need to be first mover, but it's always kind of at least check out the trend. Is it something for me or it isn't? And a very good friend of mine, she was kind of after she had her first baby, she wanted to go back into the corporate world, and then it didn't work out with the working hours and stuff like this. And then she, by accident, but of course for me there are no accidents or whatever. Then she heard from a couple of people about Web3. And then she thought, I have no idea what Web3 is. And then she kind of, took a step back. And then she just Googled, and checked it out. And she started reading about it. And she thought, oh, wow, this is really kind of the new area of the internet. It's more about inclusion, Web3 marketing. It's not about competition anymore. And it was really kind of compatible with her values. And I think it's probably competitive with compatible with most women's values. And now she is teaching at the university about Web3.
Oh, cool.
And this was within 1.5 years. So, and she was not an expert. She didn't study it, whatever. She was just curious and she wanted to know what it is. And then she figured out that's something that she likes. And if you never try, you will never know. And I know especially that women, or moms or whatever, you're always too busy to try new stuff because there are a million other things you can do in the same time. But I think here it's your future, and it's even the future of your kids. You want to know in which future they are, growing up, right? And it's better you be part of it and make sure it's a cool place, right? And now we all have these possibilities. And so that's what I wanted to point out. And for that reason, this lady, now who is a professor, we set up like panels in the metaverse for women, like every 4 months. So, especially women, they can explore this place. Then they get to know how to set up an avatar and how much fun it can be, have a meeting in the metaverse. It's kind of a secure and safe place. And somebody explains it to you, and then it's so much easier.
I love that. It goes back to curiosity every time. You're not the first person, but it's super true that, if there is something that you're interested in at all. If something catches your attention at all, whether it's a technical term or a type of job, anything that really, if you keep your eyes open or your ears open, I guess, to hearing what it is that sounds good to you, that's always a really great place to start. And then because just like you said, we have Google, we have the internet, it's so easy to start looking up and getting more informed about things. It's actually one of the questions that I have in my notes of things that I like to ask people, which kind of you answered, but how has technology advanced your career or has helped you in your life? And I think kind of you're answering it in some ways, because if you know even the basics of technology, you might be surprised how much further along you might get in any kind of career, even if you're not in technology. I know that's what happened with me, is not knowing anything about technology, but having learned the basics kind of got me further along. So those are all amazing points, and really important for people to note, because it can be intimidating to start off in any type of industry, especially technology, which is happening so fast. So those are all really great things that you mentioned.
And
um
I want to add one more thing, and now
Absolutely.
especially with artificial intelligence, there's also so much fear. Will I keep
Mm,
my job or whatever? What is the artificial intelligence about? Where we will, in which direction we are heading to? And I think especially, if you want to deal with it, then better more about it and to
so
understand
true.
it and to make your own opinion. Because if you read in the news or whatever, there is not everything is true what you write, what you read there, right? It's better to have at least a certain amount of information you can
Hmm.
trust on, or listen to different podcasts, or read different articles, so that you can make your own opinion and not to depend what other people are saying. I think this is the minimum, and it won't go away. And the earlier you start, looking into it, the better it's for you. It's taking away your fears, or maybe you can even find a possibility how you can use it for yourself or for your job, or maybe you're the first person in your company using artificial intelligence, or you can make a proposal and you get a completely new position, whatever.
So
You can
true.
always use it.
Such a good point. I really love that you added that. Yeah, being informed in any way, shape, or form can really help you in your career, regardless of where you are. And I also love that you added, which I think is important, and somebody had also mentioned this in another episode, which is to make sure that you're getting information from other places, from all places, and also filtering it out in your own head so that you're not taking just one piece of information at face value and making that the single source of truth. Making your own opinions about it is so important, because there's always going to be people who are saying it's the apocalypse, and then there's people saying that it's going to save the world, and then there's the middle ground, which is your own opinion about it. So I agree, and to that point, looking for sources, all types of sources. We have podcasts, we have the internet, we have books, we have people you can speak with, like I'm doing right now. Any kind of
Yeah.
level of curiosity is important. And I do like that. I mean, I do think that talking to people individually, if you know people that are in the space, having those conversations are so informative. I mean, I learn every time that I speak with one of you as a guest in my show, so I think that, and or a light bulb clicks and I think of something and it connects the dots. So that's really great that you said that, and I appreciate that, because I think a lot of us we tend to maybe just sit in one type of information and think that's the only thing that is true, but there's so much more out there. So I mean, the internet, it's crazy how much there is out there, and not just the internet, but in general, everybody's made up of so many different types of opinions and shapes, forms, thoughts, and everything. So we touched on a lot of things that I think are important, a lot of things that are very, again, I always call them the soft skills, the types of skills that aren't even technical, that we don't think about when we're applying that to technology. And to that point, my last question really for you is, what are some ways that you bring creativity and personality into technology when you're working with it?
That's a very good one. But I think now I bring it in that I create a room with or a space with positive energy for my team, so they can really think creative and they can, do their job in the best and optimal way they can. I think it's more now. It's really more kind of this soft skill, and the other thing, yeah, we already had. You need always to keep track what are the developments, and then always kind of reflect. How can that improve my work? How can I integrate it? And also, yeah, how can it make my life easier? And I think it's and I'm not doing it often enough, but to take this time to think.
Take the time to think. It's important. That's very important. We don't do that very often, do we?
No, most of the time we're just doing.
Yeah.
We are doers, but I think the best outcome you're having when you're also take some time to think.
Totally. Especially in the tech industry where it's so much doing all of the time, so much important things, always important. But to take that space, I'm glad we're ending with that. It's again not the first person to say that, and it's something that is very underlooked as a skill, which is to take your time to be in your own space, in your own time, and sometimes creativity pops up there. That's usually where it does.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Cornelia, I always end with one question that is nothing but everything to do with technology, which is, what makes you your happiest you? Where are you your happiest?
In general, I think I'm very positive person. So for me, the glass is always half full.
Oh.
And I think it's one of my biggest strengths that because life is life. Yeah, you just can't change it. But what I can decide is how I look at it and how I perceive it. And it's also important to know, there are some things I can change, but there are some things I can't change. And I concentrate myself on things I can change and I can make an impact on. And I guess that makes me happy.
Oh, I love that. I always love hearing those answers because it just makes people human, and when we're in technology and we're working with numbers or technical things, we forget sometimes that people are human and there's a lot of human that comes into it. So that's very beautiful. And I appreciate your positive spirit and your energy and your wisdom. It was a pleasure to speak with you. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we end our time together?
Yeah, there are two things actually. First thing is, if anybody wants to have some advice or some, you can always reach out to me and connect with me. I had a couple of mentors, and I think it's very important to pass it on and to support others that really starts through. And I think it's also kind of a generation task. We need to continue to make technology bloom. And the second one is, I'm really grateful, Carol, that you started this podcast, because I think it's so really needed to inspire people to go down this route, to spark this interest in technology and in techniques, because it's our future. And I think it's so important to shape the future, and you help people to start with it.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, Cornelia, I'll put all of your information down on the show notes. So for anyone that wants to reach out, learn more, or hear what she has to say in a more one-on-one setting, feel free to look on the show notes below. And other than that, don't forget to subscribe if you love this show and share it with others. Give us a rating. We would appreciate it. As always, I appreciate everybody for listening. Thank you so much, Cornelia, for being here, sharing your knowledge, and we'll see you in our next episode. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Carol, for having me and spending the time. I learned so much from your really cool questions, and
Oh, thank you.
energy on.
Perfect.